The footage you are currently seeing is taken from around 6 hours in and doesn't have any particular spoilers to show. I haven't hit any final evolutions, I haven't come across any megaforms, so yeah, it should be safe viewing. I realised earlier this week that I had a random day's holiday left to take, and I realised I could spend it today, and spend the day playing the new Pokemon release, because after all, I had it pre-ordered, and I thought, I don't know if it's worth doing, because I don't know if I'm expecting all that much out of Pokemon Legends ZA. Like, I'm not going in expecting it to be a bad game, but I'm also not going in expecting to be, overwhelmed with joy and love and excitement and all that good stuff. But eventually I bit the bullet and decided to do it, and I'm so glad I did, because I am liking this game far more than I expected to, and I just kind of want to tell you about it. All my first impressions. I am almost exactly 7 hours in, and I've got to a point where I feel like the game has shown me what it is and what it's going to be, and I can kind of look at that, and obviously not judge the game as a whole. I can, I reserve a right to change my mind on this game later on, but I can at the very least give you my first impressions, because I want to. If you look at discussion about this game online, it's all about flat walls and all the usual stuff about how Pokemon deserves better and you should be buying Digimon instead, and a lot of that is true. Yeah, the game should look better, it should have a higher budget. We've recently learned through leaks just what the budget of Pokemon games are, and it's kind of insanely low for just how big that franchise is. But I'm here to tell you, this is a massive improvement. And it's kind of embarrassing to say that, considering what we've got here, but it's a massive improvement over Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. I'm playing this on the Switch 1, and I have not once been taken out of the experience by a flat wall, or a low-res texture, or, certainly not a dip in frame rate. This has been a solid 30 frames a second, and it is 30 frames a second, but it is also smooth. And as for the flat walls and low-res textures and all that, I just don't notice it. Here's the thing, when you view footage of the game, you're looking at it and you're kind of examining it for flaws, because Pokemon's taught us to do that, and you're seeing all of the flaws. But when you're actually playing the game yourself and you're immersed in the world and the story and the gameplay, it kind of doesn't matter, because all of that stuff's real fun. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time in this video talking about the technicalities and the controversies. Like, I guess all I'll say is, I hope the next game continues on this upward trajectory. I hope we continue to get better, because I do think that this franchise deserves better, even from this product in terms of resolution of textures and so on and so forth. But I think all of that discussion about how shockingly bad it is a little bit outdated now. It smacks of an opinion that was formed 3 years ago and refuses to be shaken when actual improvements have started to be made. So we're going to leave that conversation at the door, and we're going to talk about the game itself. Firstly, I want to talk about the fact that it's a sequel to Pokemon Legends Arceus, and the direction in which it's a sequel, because the first sequel in a series of games is so important in establishing what that series is going to be from that point onwards, unless you're making a game in the NES era, because Dragon Quest 2, wait, no, that's a bad example, Legend of Zelda 2 and Super Mario Bros. 2 don't really, and Castlevania 2, they're all the weird outlier ones, but that's a tangent. But yeah, when they announced Pokemon Legends CA, I was, to begin with, a little bit sad, because in my mind Pokemon Legends was going to be the series in which we went to the past every time, and we had these kind of, big open world areas is a weird thing to say, because now Scarlet and Violet is out, and that's a full open world game as opposed to having 5 zones. And now, of course, Pokemon Legends ZA is out, and that is back to being a full open world again, albeit with kind of these weird subzones, but it's not like there's loading screens in between. But you know what I mean? What I really wanted was the vibe of Arceus to continue onwards into the future, and that wasn't happening with Legends ZA. And I kind of got this sense that Legends ZA, the setting of it, kind of felt like it was just another entry in the mainline series. There's arguments about whether Legends is mainline titles or not, you know what I mean, no? From the outside looking in, there is not all that much to differentiate Pokemon Legends CA to like Pokemon Scarlet and Violet or Pokemon Sword and Shield. And I still would like a future Legends title to take us back in time, and if the leaks are anything to go by, we probably will be. So I'm happy about that. I'm guessing they're going for a past, present kind of a thing. with maybe alternating lead game producers and developers and designers on each one. I don't know. But yeah, the main thing I was concerned about with this game was that I would not enjoy returning to Lumiose City, and I like X and Y. I am an X and Y, I wouldn't say apologist, it's not like my favourite entry in a series, but I did really enjoy it. But as a setting, I wasn't sold on an open world city. But after 7 hours of running around in it, I actually am liking it more than I was expecting to. And there are people who have said, like, it's very samey, it's very flat, and I understand that. But I also would like to gently point you to the Yakuza series, where all that stuff is fine and has never really been a problem. Granted, Kamurocho is full of a lot more flavour, I would say, and like, you know, interiors and stuff like that, so that's probably why it might not be a fair comparison, but I don't think setting a game in a city for its entirety of its open world is automatically a bad thing. Granted, there aren't like cars driving around. There are definitely things that they could have done to make the city a bit bigger, a bit more dynamic. But so far, after 7 hours, I'm still having a really good time exploring it. And sometimes when people talk about this stuff, I do wonder, like, is it because I'm not an older gamer, but older than certain people, you know? Like, I grew up with the PS1 and the PS2 and that era of gaming. Are my standards for open world cities and open worlds in general just a little bit lower than people who grew up with, like, PS4 games or PS3 games? You know, is this like a generational thing, I wonder? But I'm liking it, I'm having a good time. I really appreciate the rooftop exploration, that's real fun. The wild areas themselves, I was concerned because the first one is quite small, but they do get bigger. And I was also concerned because you only have 6 at the start of the game, and there's like 6 or 7 Pokemon to be found in each one. I was like, that's not enough for an entire game. But 2 more wild zones have just opened up to me 7 hours in, so it looks like that's something that they're going to continue to build and expand upon. And I do wonder, you know, reviewers have hinted at things, and I wonder if we really are going to be spending the entirety of our time in Lumiose City. But even then, outside of wild areas as well, you can still find the occasional Pokemon roaming around on a rooftop or in a street corner that you can catch, and that's fun. But yes, gameplay-wise, as a sequel to Legends Arceus, we are returning to, you know, throwing Pokeballs at... I mean, we kind of had that a little bit in Scarlet and Violet, don't get me wrong, but like the Arceus way of doing things. Pokemon can harm you, you've got to dodge out of the way. That especially comes into effect when you're doing these Rogue Mega Evolution fights as well. And as I'm playing it, I'm realizing just how much I missed that. I think this is my preferred version of catching Pokemon compared to like the mainline series. And I'm not talking combat, we'll get to combat in a little bit. I definitely think, though, to give you a preview of my thoughts, the mainline series should remain turn-based and this series should remain real-time based. I think we should have both. But in terms of, you know, like sneaking up on Pokemon and having you know, a better chance of catching them when you sneak up and throw a Pokeball at them from behind and stuff, I just love that gameplay so much. I mean, it can get a bit stressful when there's like a bunch of Pokemon running at you, and it can get a little bit frustrating when, you know, I do think the sneaking mechanics in both Legends titles now still could be a little bit better. But overall, it's a lot of fun, and I really missed this version of Pokemon, and I'm so glad it's back. I've seen people from the outside saying that this looks like the most soulless game they've ever seen, and they couldn't be more wrong. I was unexpectedly met with so much charm as I was walking the streets of Lumiose, and maybe this is just coming from a place of like fandom, right? Like, I love Pokemon so much, I've played so many of these games, it's been a part of my life for so long, and I feel like the older I get, I exponentially love the series more. So I guess I'm coming at this from a positive bias. But there are so many times when I've seen someone walking around with like their Tyrant or their Umbreon or something, and I'm just like, oh look, it's Tyrant, it's Umbreon. And I don't know, like the music is so nice. It's like, you know, familiar music from X and Y, but with more of like a plinky plonky city kind of a charm to it as well. I never come to a Pokemon game for the story or expect much from the story, and I can't say I'm exactly blown away by it at the minute, but I am quite enjoying the characters we've met so far and their characterization through their dialogue and the things that they've had to say and such. I do kind of wish that we had voice acting by now, I think when you have an RPG with this much attention put, well, this much attention, but it's a 3D RPG with characters, gesticulating as they talk and their mouths are moving and stuff, and just having absolutely no sound at all coming out of their mouths can make things feel a little bit weird, especially when you have like that intro movie and you're seeing people from the back and you've got like the text at the bottom of the screen, indicating what they're saying. It just feels like something is missing. I had a friend today say, like, if they really don't want to do voice acting, they should do like at least Animal Crossing noises, like just something to indicate that speech is happening. And yeah, I'm all for that, I think. So I did realize it's a double-edged sword, because I'm not that invested in the story of Pokemon or the dialogue of the characters, and if I had to sit and listen to a voice say the words to me, I wouldn't get through it as fast and I might lose my attention a bit quicker. So maybe, yeah, something more like that kind of stuff could be better. But silence ain't it. Now let's talk about the big new thing in this game, and that's the real-time combat. How are we going to feel about the real-time combat? Because I didn't see a reason to change it from the turn-based combat. And I guess I never had a super strong opinion about it, but I was mildly apprehensive to hear that we were messing with the combat in this way. Because, yeah, it's very Xenoblade Chronicles, and I've played some Xenoblade Chronicles, and I know that it can get stressful in a way that normally you wouldn't expect from a Pokemon title. And would I want that out of a Pokemon title? And while it's not perfect, and again, I don't want this to be implemented into the mainline games and become the main mode of combat in Pokemon, I do think it's really good. It's really fun. Because it makes you think about the game in ways that you've never had to think about it before. Like, how you get those moves like Growl and Leer and stuff, and you're like, well, I'm overwriting that because it's not really worth spending an entire turn lowering my opponent's stats when I'm going to take them out in 2 or 3 tackles anyway, at least early game. Well, the shift from turn-based combat to real-time combat has turned those moves into moves with a cooldown, which means that when you use Razor Leaf, suddenly you can't use Razor Leaf immediately again, but you can use one of your other moves. So suddenly move diversity becomes really, really big deal. And it's not just like, oh, I have a Razor Leaf for my grass move, and then I have like something for like a, crunch for like a dark move, so I have all these different move typings, which is what we like in the turn-based strategy. It becomes more like, oh, it's okay if I have 2 separate grass moves which do similar things, because then I can use one while the other's on cooldown. And as I've already mentioned, the stat-affecting moves as well. In fact, Protect. You've probably heard about this before if you've heard anyone else talk about this game, but Protect is the most useless move in turn-based Pokemon. You use it, and I think it guarantees you that you do not take damage from the next hit. Like, okay, maybe if you are going up against someone who's using like Solar Beam and they're charging up their power, you can then use Protect to make them have wasted the previous turn. Sure, it's niche, it's not useless, it's just niche. But in this game, you can use it almost like a block. Like, you can see that your opponent is about to hit you with just any move. And you're like, oh, Protect's off cooldown, I'll use Protect, and then you don't get hit by that move. And in a real-time situation, that is so much more valuable. I feel like I want to teach Protect to every single one of my Pokemon. It almost feels like it shouldn't be a move. It should just be like a baseline ability that you can do for any Pokemon. It's so good. However, it is a trade-off. I think in such a hectic real-time combat situation, it can become a bit more difficult to understand the lay of the land in terms of, like, if you're not aware or if you don't quite remember what's super effective against what, it's not entirely clear, at least not in my 7 hours of training my brain with this new method of combat, what's super effective if you're not already familiar with what should be. I always get, turned around when it comes to dark types and ghost types and fairy types and, that entire triangle, quadrangle, there's another one in there somewhere. Poison types? Anyway, I can never remember what affects what out of those types, and so when it comes up with those, in the turn-based game, I'm like, oh, I can just look at what's what before I make my decision. But in a real-time scenario, it's like, I'm just going to use it and hope it does a decent amount of damage. And that's another thing, because if your super effective move is on cooldown and you have a not very effective move, suddenly it is worthwhile to use that not very effective move instead of just running around and waiting. So super effectiveness in its own right kind of takes on a different kind of level of importance than it used to. I also love quick swapping Pokemon. For instance, let's just go with the, Gen 1 starters so it's easy to understand. We all understand that type triangle. Let's say I have a Bulbasaur and I've just fainted a Squirtle, and then the trainer goes to throw out Charmander. I can then very quickly swap to my Squirtle. When I say it like that, it doesn't sound very different to the way that it works in the turn-based battles, but in a real-time environment, it feels so much snappier. You're not like losing an entire turn just because you're swapping out your Pokemon. It's a lot more reactive, and it's interesting to kind of be, kind of like hot swapping between Pokeballs in a reactive kind of a way. It's just so engaging, and it really helps me appreciate my entire team in a way that I kind of haven't in previous titles. I think it's because it's not just about do I have something to swap to, it's the reaction time of realizing what you're being met with, looking at what you've got, and understanding that you should swap to this other thing and doing it as quickly as possible so that you don't get damaged with your current Pokemon by the new one that's just been thrown out by your opponent. Now, interestingly, positioning is also important, and that's a weird one because you don't exactly directly control where your Pokemon goes. It just kind of vaguely follows you around as you run around. So for instance, Charmander shoots that Firebolt at you, or whatever it's called, and you do have the opportunity to run away and have your Bulbasaur follow you, and that Firebolt goes whizzing past and your Bulbasaur doesn't take any damage. However, that's really imprecise, and I've been seeing a lot of people vent frustration about that, being like, I don't understand how I should be moving my Pokemon, or like, it's frustrating that I can't definitively tell it to go somewhere to dodge a move. And I think you should view it more as, like, to call back to Yakuza again, Yakuza Like a Dragon, where the position of enemies on the battlefield when you use a move is important because some attacks are AoE, and they will just dynamically move around, and it's never a certain thing. It's not something that you should ever rely on. It's more of like a bonus if you just happen to get it right. In general, I do kind of just run around in circles as I'm fighting to try and get my Pokemon to run around and dodge things. That in itself isn't always the best idea though, because sometimes my Razor Leaf hits a box instead of the Pokemon. So there's a bit of give and take there, but I don't hate it. Again, it does feel a bit imprecise and weird, and I don't think it's supposed to be super tactical, that aspect of battle. I think it is supposed to be partially luck-based, like, oh, I just happened to step out of a way in time. It's not like you're supposed to be actively evading. Now, this game does have a day-night cycle, and it expects you to do the wild area stuff and catching wild Pokemon and, doing tasks for various people in a city during the day. And then it expects you to be going and doing this championship, this Zeta A tournament at night. And I do really like the Zeta A tournament because it's about, like, trying to sneak up on your enemies and hit them before they hit you. It is a little bit frustrating sometimes because there's a little bit of a charge up to your attacks, and sometimes the enemy trainer will turn around and see you, and just as your attack is going off, it won't be a surprise attack because it will register that the enemy has seen you, and in fact sometimes it will be a surprise attack on their part, and that does end up feeling a little bit janky. But for the most part, I really like it because, first of all, you're incentivized to explore through, like, these tokens you can pick up, which get turned into money at the end of a night, and if you get knocked out as well, you do lose half of your tokens, so there's a risk-reward factor there that doesn't feel too high stakes. But then there's also this, I don't know what it's actually called, I'm going to call it a wild card system, that's what it feels like, where you pick up these cards, and basically you get, because when you defeat a trainer, you get awarded a set amount of points, and you also have a set amount of time in order to earn those points because the day-night cycle is in effect, and it might dawn, and then everyone scatters. They don't, I wish they did. There's just a small loading screen and everyone disappears. But these cards will be things like, use a super effective water type move, or sneak up on an enemy by using an electric type move, and they will give you extra points if you do those things. And while it's like a small thing, it really does lend kind of like an extra layer to the gameplay there, because instead of just going, I need to defeat this trainer and this trainer and this trainer, you're going, okay, This trainer has a Vaporeon. I don't know if it's in the game, I'm just using random Pokemon. And I don't have anything to counter water right now. So I'm going to avoid that one. Or maybe not even that, but like I don't have any cards which would reward me for using electric attacks right now. So I'm going to ignore that one. And I'm going to go and find another one. And then suddenly you find like a Shroomish. And you're like, ah, good. I need to set things on fire. Let's set fire to this poor Shroomish. I don't know where I keep pulling these Pokemon from. I've not seen any of these Pokemon. But yeah, as far as the actual day-night cycle stuff goes, I don't love being forced to do certain things at certain times. Not gonna lie. I wish I could tackle it at my own pace, and you kind of can, because you can always vote to like skip night or skip day by sitting on a bench and resting for a while. But I have only just unlocked that ability. I imagine I might have been able to do that by going back to the hotel and sleeping in my bed, but that's a whole like travel here, do the thing, interrupt what you were doing thing. And it's not like you can't do wild areas at night, you can, and in fact, I think there's certain wild Pokemon that only appear at night. But even so, it feels like you're wasting the night if you're not doing the Z to A tournament thing. Maybe that's just something I need to get over, but that is something that does bug me a little bit. But yeah, I think that's pretty much all I've got to say about Legends CA so far. I've seen so much negativity from people who are never even going to touch the game online, so I thought I would put this out and give you a positive look at the game from someone who's actually really enjoying it, like a lot more than they thought they would. And yeah, I have positive things to say even about the technical side. Like, I was so worried about getting the Switch 1 edition because I don't have a Switch 2, and you can go and view side-by-sides, and obviously the Switch 2 edition looks nicer, it's got less jagged edges, it's got less pop-in, it's got 60 frames a second. But also at the same time, if you're not, you know, comparing them side by side and you're just playing the Switch 1 version, it doesn't feel bad. You know, it feels like it's nowhere near as bad as Violet. It's not even as bad as Legends Arceus. It feels like we're pretty much back up to the standards of Sword and Shield. And Sword and Shield had people complaining about tree textures and stuff, so I'm being, like, real here, right? Like, it's still not, like, a current gen game. In terms of the technicalities of the texture resolutions and all that, but I feel like we're back in a place where it's not gonna distract me. Like, there are gonna be times where I go, that wall looks very flat, or those paintings are just blurs, but it's not making me go, ugh, I just gotta look past it to enjoy the game, you know, like I was with Violet. So yeah, I would recommend this game. If you are at all curious and if you love Pokemon, I would recommend Legends CA. Now, there's every chance that the game is gonna be repetitive after this point, or it's not gonna show me anything new, and I'm gonna end up coming down on not liking it quite as much as I initially was later down the line. But these are my first impressions after 7 hours of play, and I've had such a good day playing this. I'm so glad I booked the day off, and I'm really excited to see like what the new Mega Evolutions are, and if there are any new regional variants. I don't even know if there are, don't tell me. And, you know, what the new evolutions of the starters might be, and stuff like that. So, yeah, I'm really excited about this game. I'm going to go back to playing it now, and thank you for checking out my thoughts. I hope you've enjoyed this video. I don't normally do stuff like this, but I want to do more stuff like this. I want to do more stuff where I just sit down and talk about a game, whether it's my first impressions, or whether it's my thoughts after finishing it, or even just like if I'm, you know, 60-70% of the way through it and I know that I'm probably going to drop off. Despite enjoying it, I should probably get my thoughts out there while I have them. So maybe more videos like this. I don't know, they seem to do well as well. So yeah, anyway, thanks for hanging out. Catch you on whatever I make next.